Ever wondered what happens when Sigma males, the lone wolves of society, take a walk on the dark side? Just like everyone else, they too have their not-so-bright moments. While these individuals are known for their independence, intelligence, and introversion, there are certain shadow traits that come to light when they hit their breaking point. Even though these traits may not be evident at first, they can manifest in different forms and have a significant impact on their lives and those around them. Here are 10 shadow traits of Sigma men when they take a dark turn. Number 1. Silent manipulation. While Sigma males are known for their honesty and integrity, when they feel backed into a corner or betrayed in some way, they may resort to silent manipulation if the situation calls for it. Silent manipulation can be an unsettling trait that surfaces when these individuals stray into darker territories. Unlike the obvious manipulators that are easy to spot, the Sigma man's manipulative tactics are usually hidden behind their typical quietness. This doesn't mean he's overtly controlling or demanding. He uses his intelligence and understanding of human nature to subtly influence situations and people. Think of it like a puppeteer pulling strings behind a curtain. They might create scenarios that lead you to believe that you're making your own decisions, when in reality, they've cleverly guided you towards a specific outcome. It's not an easy thing to detect, and by the time you realize it, you've already fallen into the carefully crafted web. Of course, not all Sigma males resort to such tactics, but it's a shadow trait that can crop up when they're pushed into a corner or when they feel like the final line has been crossed. It's a darker side of their independence and intelligence, one that doesn't reflect their true potential. Number 2. Extreme secrecy. Extreme secrecy is another aspect that can manifest when Sigma males hit a rough patch. They are already pretty private individuals, preferring to keep their personal life under wraps. But when things take a turn for the worst, this trait can ramp up to a whole new level. What does that look like? Imagine a fortress with walls so high and impenetrable that it's impossible to know what's happening inside. That's how a Sigma can appear in this state. He builds these emotional walls, locking away his true feelings and thoughts. There's a kind of isolation that takes place, a withdrawal from the world that can be concerning to those who care about them. This is not the same as their typical love for solitude. It's a more intense form of privacy that doesn't allow for emotional connection or openness. This level of secrecy can strain relationships and potentially lead to misunderstandings, as others struggle to understand their thoughts and intentions. This is not a universal trait of all Sigmas, but a shadow trait that can emerge under specific circumstances. It doesn't define them, but is part of their complexity. Number 3. Silent treatment. This shadow trait can emerge when Sigma males go through a dark phase. This isn't just about staying quiet for a while. It's a prolonged, deliberate act of non-communication. They tend to use silence as a weapon, ignoring or avoiding the person who betrayed them or caused them pain. It's a way of expressing their hurt and disappointment without saying a word. It's like an invisible barrier goes up, cutting off all lines of communication. The person on the receiving end might find themselves constantly trying to break through this barrier, only to be met with more silence. This can create feelings of confusion, frustration, and insecurity. While Sigma men usually don't hold grudges, this shadow trait can cause them to hold onto negative emotions for longer than usual. It takes a lot of understanding and patience to break through this barrier and reach the Sigma on the other side. Betraying their trust or hurting them in some way can trigger this silent treatment, as they put in all their effort to protect themselves from further pain. Number 4. Rigid thinking. When we talk about Sigma men taking a dark turn, rigid thinking is another shadow trait that can come into play. Normally, Sigma males are open-minded and flexible, using their intelligence to adapt to different situations. However, when they're under stress or experiencing a setback, their thinking can dramatically narrow down and become rigid. It's as if they're viewing the world through a tunnel, completely focused on a single path or idea and resistant to other perspectives or solutions. Imagine a ship's captain so fixated on a certain course that he refuses to consider alternative routes, even in the face of an incoming storm. That's how a Sigma male can become in these situations: stubborn, unyielding, and intensely focused on one way of doing things. This rigid thinking can lead to unnecessary conflict and miscommunication, as they may dismiss others' ideas and opinions without fully considering them. This shadow trait takes over only when they're navigating through dark waters and feel the need to assert their independence or protect their autonomy. Number 5. Deciding without considering emotions. Decisions can sometimes be made in the blink of an eye, driven by pure logic, without considering the emotional aspects. This can happen, especially when Sigmas turn a bit darker. They might remove emotions from the equation entirely, focusing solely on the cold, hard facts. It's not exactly heartlessness, but more like they're trying to protect their feelings or avoid letting emotions affect their judgment. For instance, if they're presented with a tough choice, they may resort to a systematic, logical approach, disregarding how their decision might emotionally impact themselves or others. This could be a bit unsettling for those who prioritize emotional factors in decision-making. Deciding without considering emotions is not a permanent trait, but a temporary one that emerges when Sigmas are going through tough times. While emotions may not play a big role in their decision-making process, it doesn't mean they cannot feel empathy or compassion. It's just that sometimes they choose logic over emotions to protect themselves from potential hurt or disappointment. Number 6. Obsessive focus. When life takes a rough turn, Sigma males can get super locked in on one thing. It's like they put on blinders and the rest of the world doesn't exist anymore. Only that one thing they're obsessing about is real to them. This can manifest in different ways. It could be a project, a goal, or even a person. They'll pour their energy and focus into this one thing, shutting out everything else. It's almost like a coping mechanism for them. By fixating on something specific, they're able to block out other negative thoughts and emotions. This obsessive focus can also come from a desire to gain control over their life, which may feel chaotic and unpredictable at the moment. They believe that focusing on this one thing gives them some semblance of control in an otherwise uncertain world. While this trait can be beneficial in certain situations, it can also lead to neglecting other important aspects of life, such as relationships or self-care. If they feel like they have to prove themselves or achieve something to feel worthy, this obsessive focus can manifest in nights of endless work or pushing themselves too hard to reach a goal. Some people may see this as a sign of determination and dedication, but it can lead to burnout and isolation in the long run. Sure, these individuals may have a natural inclination towards intense focus and determination, but this shadow trait takes it to an extreme level during times of stress or hardship. Number 7. Judgment of expressive people. While Sigma men are not quick to judge others, when they go through a darker phase, they may struggle with those who are more expressive and emotional. They may see these individuals as weak or too sensitive, unable to handle their emotions in a rational manner. They might find these individuals irritating or challenging to understand, leading to a preconceived notion that clouds any chance of forming a genuine connection. In the mind of the Sigma, a man who openly displays his emotions is an open book. This lack of mystery bothers Sigma, so he just might cancel the other person even before getting to know them. When the alpha male shows up overly emotional or even a bit needy, the Sigma's first instinct may be to distance himself from them. So while he may not be quick to judge, this shadow trait can cause him to make snap judgments based on his perception of emotional expression. While Sigma men themselves may not be the most expressive, they can sometimes have a hard time understanding or connecting with those who are, especially in their darker phases. Number 8. Logic bending. When things get challenging, some individuals twist their logic to suit their perspective. a trait called logic bending. Picture this. You're trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle, but one piece doesn't fit. Instead of looking for the right piece, you cut and shave that wrong piece until it fits the slot. This is what happens when logic takes a dark turn. It's not about understanding the world as it is, but reshaping reality to fit preconceived ideas. When threatened or under immense stress, Sigma men can convince themselves that their skewed view of a situation is the absolute truth. They might ignore facts, dismiss other people's viewpoints, or even bend the rules, all to make their narrative work. This fixation on their own version of reality can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and poor decision-making. It's like trying to navigate a maze while wearing tinted glasses. The path seems right to you, but it's far from reality. This distorted logic isn't a permanent trait, but a shadow that emerges in tough times. Number 9. Recklessness. Sigma men are typically careful thinkers, weighing the pros and cons before making a move. But recklessness can sometimes take hold when faced with intense stress or feeling cornered. It's like a switch has been flipped, and caution is thrown to the wind. Acting on impulse without thinking about consequences becomes the order of the day. It could be as simple as making a risky financial decision, or as serious as putting their own health at risk. This reckless behavior is not a constant trait for Sigmas, but more of a response to a situation that feels overwhelming. It's a desperate attempt to regain control over chaotic or unpredictable circumstances. It's a bit of a paradox. On one hand, there's a deep desire for control, and yet, in such moments, they willingly leap into the unknown. And while this might provide a temporary thrill or a sense of liberation from stress, it can lead to more problems down the line. It can also be quite alarming for those who care about them. After all, recklessness isn't just about being daring or adventurous. It's about crossing boundaries without considering the potential fallout. Number 10. Meticulous planning. Meticulous planning might sound like a positive trait, and usually it is. It's when someone thinks through every step, leaves no stone unturned, and prepares for every possible outcome. But what happens when this trait takes a dark turn? Imagine planning everything to an extreme degree, turning it into an obsession. Suddenly, there's no room for spontaneity or flexibility. Every minute of the day is scheduled. Every decision is pre-made, and there's not a lot of space for anything unexpected. It becomes a rigid routine that leaves no room for deviation. The joy of living in the moment evaporates. This compulsive need to plan doesn't just affect day-to-day activities, but also seeps into relationships. There's an expectation for others to adhere to this rigid schedule, which can cause tension and conflict. The desire to control every aspect of life through meticulous planning can be a way for Sigma males to deal with uncertainty or stress. But at what cost? The ability to be spontaneous, to enjoy the unexpected delights life throws our way, can be lost. It may help to manage stress in the short term, but over time, it can lead to burnout and isolation.